So since my last video, a lot of people have been asking why I didn't go with the DJI FPV and why I instead went with the Nazgul 5. So in this video, I'm going to go over my thought process, what I consider to be the flaws in the DJI FPV system, and why I went the more DIY route instead. I've been interested in FPV for maybe 2 or 3 years, but I always was scared to jump into it. I know there's a lot of ongoing costs associated with flying and you have to maintain your drone. That cost money, which I wasn't prepared to commit to. So when I heard the rumors last year that DJI was going to release their own FPV system, I got excited. DJI just has a knack for making complicated things really simple, easy to use, and reliable. When they released their launch video, it had everything I wanted in a drone. Return to home, good battery life, an adjustable camera angle, and maybe most importantly, it had easy to use batteries, which you don't need a degree in physics to understand. However, as people got their hands on it and started releasing videos, I realized that for me as a filmmaker, there was some serious flaws that I wouldn't be able to get past. The first major flaw, which is basically a deal breaker for me, is the camera quality. I don't consider the DJI camera to be of sufficient quality to use in a professional capacity. It's similar to their older drones like the original Mavic Pro, and it has that over-sharpened, low bitrate, mushy look. Over the years, GoPro has been getting better and better, and the quality you can get from a GoPro with a little bit of work in post is far superior to anything you'll get from a DJI FPV drone. Another thing, which wasn't a deal breaker for me personally, but I know for a lot of people it was, is repairability. If you break an arm or damage the camera, you're going to have to send it into DJI, and that is going to cost you. Over time, the costs will add up, and just the inconvenience of being without it would be an issue. In contrast with my Nazgul, I've already crashed a bunch of times. I'm gonna have to take the motors off and clean them out the hard way. If I break a motor, it's about 20 bucks, get a new one, put it in. These are all old motors that I filled with sand, and that's just after a little bit of flying. Propellers, these cost $4 for a set. These arms, they just screw in right there. I can unscrew these and then replace the entire arm. Again, it's not expensive. No matter what happens, I should be able to repair it for not a lot of money, as long as I can retrieve it. There's one thing which I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, which I consider to be a design flaw with the whole system, and that's the simple fact that it only has one camera. So on a normal FPV drone, you have a little camera like this. That's what you see in your goggles. It's not the best quality, but the key thing is that it runs at a high frame rate. So this runs at 120 frames a second at 720p. Then you have your GoPro on top, which you never really touch, you just hit record and go. It's just two separate systems. One is optimized for flying, one is optimized for getting the shot. How the DJI works is you get the same feed in your goggles as what you're recording. In a way, that's great because you know exactly what you're getting and you have an incredible picture in your goggles. But the major drawback is that your recording frame rate and the frame rate that you see in your goggles is the same. So if you optimize for cinematic shots, shooting at maybe a lower frame rate and the more open shutter speed, it's going to be really difficult to fly. If you optimize for flying and go for a fast shutter speed, high frame rate, your footage isn't going to look that good. The codec falls apart. When you're flying around trees and water, there's just so much detail that needs to be encoded and it gets lost, becomes mushy, because it only records at 50 megabit per second H.265, which is just not enough to support 60 frames a second 4K. In contrast, the GoPro shoots at 100 megabit per second H.265, and even then sometimes it's struggling to encode that. But I know DJI have said that they're working on a cinematic mode which might solve some of this. Single camera systems will always have that downside, which I don't think any amount of clever engineering can get around. The last thing, which I know a lot of people have talked about already, is stabilization. I don't actually use GoPro's Hypersmooth at all. I stabilize all my footage in Real Steady, which does a great job, although it is the most annoying program to use. Real Steady uses the gyro data from the GoPro to stabilize your footage, and it gets a perfect result every time. With DJI, you're stuck with the stabilization they can do on the drone. Again, I give points to the GoPro on this one. The stabilization system's much better, and that's really important for getting good cinematic FPV footage. So after all that, obviously I went with the Nazgul. I think for a lot of people, the DJI FPV is going to be a great choice. I just personally really value that camera quality. The semi-DIY route that I took is not for everyone either, but it's been a lot of fun and I feel more confident thrashing this drone, and I think the results speak for themselves. I have high hopes that DJI will improve on their design and release a V2 at some point, which might fix a lot of the problems that I have, and please add a better camera and higher bitrate recording, and then maybe I'll pick one up, I don't know. But until then, I wouldn't recommend the system to anyone looking to get the best cinematic footage you can get with an FPV drone. Hopefully this is helpful to someone who's on the fence about what to buy. I'm planning on making new videos every 2 weeks, so subscribe and let me know what you want to see next.